Hey there guys, Spazzy Dragon here, aka Syndromes, and holy hell, it is happening! So, first things first, very sorry about the overall quality of this video. I'm doing it as a last moment thing at like past midnight on Friday night because work happened and I didn't get a chance to make this video as I had promised. So, essentially, yeah, you read it right. What is happening right now is that the devs have essentially released information on a set of events that are going to be perceived as the end of the Gallic War and subsequently the end of the focus on the Gallic storyline in Discovery Freelancer. Now, this is actually a huge deal, especially for people who have stopped playing Disco specifically because they started, like myself, feeling that the whole Gallic thing was a little bit too forced. There was too much focus on the whole storyline, which, while welcome at the time of its implementation because it was something completely new and it came along with all of these new interesting things that Disco was added in 85, it has very much overstayed its welcome and has had in many ways a very negative impact on some potential factions and the communities centered around those factions. So I know for a fact that the Independent Miners Guild, and specifically Jack Henderson's group, got shafted because what happened is that group of players were given complete authority over a group that was populated by people who specifically picked a region where there was no house influence, and they had no alternative to go from there. So what was once a group that kind of focused on these sort of convoys and such, they basically got shafted by the mere presence of the Gallics, which made sense in the storyline, but the problem there was, as one player put it, if I remember correctly, that dealing with roleplay consequences is an obvious part of the roleplay community, but not when they were very much forced on your faction without any exit strategy planned for it. And I can sort of see that. Actually, as I was writing the bullet points for this video, which, by the way, I had to abandon because, again, this just took way too much time and I don't have time anymore, I was actually going to be very neutral about the whole Gallic thing, but, yeah, those of you who are familiar with me, they already know that I'm not good at hiding my biases, and I really don't care that much about the Gallics. They were a neat idea, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized we already have so many real-life, you know, forces sort of inspiration when it comes to factions. We have the Brits, we have the Germans, we have the Russians, etc. I mean, how much cooler would have been when the invading force were like junkyard ships that were made by Australia, New Zealand people, like straight out of Mad Max, just taped together junk piles en masse. That would have been a very interesting thing, I think, and, well, still. The reason, again, why this is such a big deal, and why I'm making a video about this, is to remind people that, hey, Disco is still alive. If you left due to the whole Gallic thing, you can come back now, because the focus is, as far as we understand, gone. And the biggest thing about all of this right now is the fact that by closing a chapter like this, Disco has had a... Like, the last time this happened was way back in, like, 2010s. But basically this means that this allows us to compile and gather all of the storyline progression between the start and the end of the Gallic chapter. And most importantly, this allows the excuse of pruning bad roleplay. So the story devs can currently add the timeline, prune it, and give people a chance to opt out some of the less interesting things and more damaging things. So, again, obviously, just straight up you know, re-rolling roleplay is probably not going to be something that is happening, but you have the chance to prune something out if you want. And of course, as usual, it would be a very good idea to append this chapter to the overall idea, the overall history of disco in a very condensed manner, and overall, I think that we could take this as a chance to actually rework how we introduce new players to disco, and my suggestion right now would be to take the condensed, and I do mean very condensed variant of all of the history of disco, and summarize it in a one-paragraph sentence, which starts with, "After the Nomad War and the escapades of Anderson Trent, blah blah blah." It has to be one paragraph to give the people a very short TLDR of what disco is and where they stand. As I already said in the previous video, the huge problem with new players in disco is that as an analog to a in real life Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder group, it's like inviting a group of people into your session, handing them 7 volumes, like 7 years of story, and basically telling them, once you figure this out, feel free to join this. This is not how it happens, and I think that the fact that we finally are at a closing chapter, we have the chance to actually update all of the assets that are in the game regarding to lore, and bring them up to speed. So basically, take the history of Sirius, remove the bullshit timeline, put it in the Discovery Wikipedia where it belongs. This is not what people look for when they say, oh, I want to see the history, what happened after, like, what is the history of disco. They can see that on the Wikipedia page if they want. What they actually want, and in-game, as they are in-game, the thing they want to see is a pamphlet of what they need to expect in this roleplay server. What is the difference? So, again, that is one thing, and secondly, I actually forgot. But yeah, I think that this whole situation is about the wrap-up of what has been years upon years of drama-inducing mistakes, and simply the idea that the devs and the story devs can finally focus on something other than Gallia is a huge deal. And needless to say, I'm personally looking forward to it. I might actually start playing again just to see what new things they are going to do now that they don't have to worry about the whole Gallic, Bretonnian, Libertonian war finally. So yeah, big news. This is actually one of the biggest twists in disco in the last few years. And needless to say, I'm looking forward to what happens now. This is Fancy Dragon aka Syndromes. Good luck. Oh, and by the way, if you want to rejoin Disco and you have your old forum account, remember the veteran package application is still thing, so log in, drop a thing, and you'll be given assets to just join in the game.